On the fourth day on the Camino, we dealt with the theme of trust in yourself. And I think that's a pretty big topic, isn't it? Because when we wake up at, 16, 17, maybe 2021, when we're awake and we realize that we actually have consciousness, then I think most of us are startled and truly afraid, because the question becomes, now what? And when I come awake, usually I'm perhaps finished school or finishing school and I'm facing university, and that's a whole different game for sure. When I was in high school was a bit of a lark, to be quite honest. Many people were quitting high school because the money that was paid in the industrial sector, in logging, fishing, farming, mining, was enormous. If you worked 1 year as a laborer, perhaps as a logger, and you've got some training, you could perhaps buy a house in a year and a half. And you would pay cash. Small house, of course, in some isolated village, but still a house. You had home ownership in your thinking in a very limited period of time. So why go to school? Why go further? So that became your reality in a sense. So you were fearful and you didn't have to trust in yourself because it was given to you. You just get up in the morning, hopefully not too sick or hungover or stoned out or whatever it was. Go down, catch the bus or get on a boat or wake up or whatever it was and make money. Make money. This is a true story. I was at university a number of years later, and a fellow in front of me sitting in this amphitheater disappeared. And he came back, 3 weeks later, and I said to him, "Where were you?" And he said, "I was fishing." And I thought, geez, that's kind of odd, fishing. My dad took me fishing. I said, "How was the fishing?" Trying to be a bit cheeky and glib. And he said to me, "Oh, geez, pretty good. Bought a house." He had made $50,000 on a herring boat in 3 weeks. That was 5% of the crew take. The boat had made $1 million. He got 5%. So you could see the money that was involved. So you didn't have to question yourself. There was nothing involved in trusting yourself. But you learn to trust yourself when you get away from the industrial sector and you go to perhaps to school, to university, you travel a bit, and you have to make some decisions in life. And those decisions many times are wrong. And then you learn, don't you? Perhaps the decision in a relationship, you pick the wrong boy or girl, you get a job, it's the wrong job, totally. You enter in some form of career, it's awful, I can't believe I'm doing this, all of those things. But slowly but surely, when you act, you begin to learn. Action is the great teacher, isn't it? Once you act and you make a mistake, you learn, I'm not going to make the same mistake twice, or at least 3 times, right? You learn that this body, I've got to nurture it. I've got to find loving relationships that are going to help me grow. But it takes a long time, especially now, I think, for young people, because the internet bombards us with comparative images constantly. Wherever I go, I'm always looking at the phones to see what people are looking at, and they're comparing pictures, mostly. Young people. Older people play games, because a lot of older people, I think, have just stopped. They're just continuing on to some mythical time called retirement. They're not learning at all, I think. It's frightening, but I think it's true. But this new generation has a chance to think. It can learn to think critically, and most assuredly, it can learn that time is very precious. Those two phenomena, right? it can learn. And if it doesn't learn, well, it's going to be a different world for sure, because we can see right now the crises that are upon the earth, be it may in Gaza or in the Ukraine. These are solvable situations with critical thinking, aren't they? But it seems that there's a whole group of people that want to stir up, certainly in the West, and I suppose it's the same in their own respective countries. They want to stir up some type of anger that allows the crisis to continue. And of course, there's money to be made with weapons, and it just goes on, right? But anyone standing back would say, wait a moment, this is like the body with an ache in the toe, and if the toe gets inflamed too much, the body won't be able to walk, right? Because we're all interconnected now, aren't we? So how am I going to trust myself? Well, firstly, I'm going to learn that I am my own teacher, as I often say. Perhaps every podcast, I say the same thing. But I am really going to learn that this private world that I occupy can become excellent, as Aristotle tells us, right? Always excellence, meaning the action of ongoing excellence. Why not? Why not? And if I think that way, if I'm cognitive enough, and most of us are quite smart, right? For sure that I can think this thing through. Then I can start to talk to myself, and I can begin to learn, become a broad reader. Gotta read every single day. Gotta read. Gotta learn. I have one student, he told me the other day, I don't read, and I was just horrified. If he doesn't read, how's he ever going to function in the world in the 21st century without being a slave? The biggest fear that I have, actually, as a 69 or 70-year-old man, is that we're going to become slaves again. In a sense, chattel slaves, because even though we won't be owned by perhaps a man or a woman, we'll be owned by a corporation, we'll be owned by our debt, but we will not be free. And we're being told we're free. But I don't know too many people who really are truly free from crisis, bad health, bad emotional instability, etc., right? And this is because we don't learn to trust in the self. But we can. We can. All we have to do is wake up in the morning and be grateful to be me, the flawed human being called me. And then appreciate where I am right now and realize that I can build on me. Because my life, this great piece of life that I possess, somehow, is going to be a wonderful existence. Not without its pain, not without its suffering, but I promise myself, I'm going to live a wonderful and flourishing life, wherever the stream of life takes me. And yes, I will try to direct it, of course, but ultimately that stream is still going to fill me with nourishment and sustenance. I think it's a wonderful way to think. I really do. And it's not positive. It's just truthful. So trust in yourself. Absolutely. And you know what they say. Critical thinking is everything, especially when we learn to trust in ourselves. And critical thinking is great, truly great. You take care. God bless. Bye-bye.
Hello, everyone. This is Dave, and I'm here with Leon. This is our fourth day on the El Camino Trail. Today, we are going to talk about trust in ourselves. This very important theme was recommended to us by Marlo. So, we woke up today, and it was a very sunny day. The weather was hot, and we began our journey at around 7 o'clock. Around 11 o'clock, we came across a small oasis in this rural area along the El Camino Trail. And this was a small cafe. We heard some music, and they were serving modest sandwiches and drinks. And Leon and I, we looked at each other and we decided we should stop for a bite to eat because it would still be a long ways into town, Pamplona, where we were going to spend the night. As we're at this cafe, I'm listening and I hear some music being played in the background coming from the speakers. And I listened again to this music, and I looked around the cafe and I thought to myself, I think the singer is probably a local singer from this region. We were in the Basque region in Spain. I thought the music sounded fantastic, and like I mentioned, I thought it was a local singer rather than a mainstream artist. This was just my feeling. And so I asked the owner, I said, "Who's singing? It sounds wonderful." And she says, "Oh, that's Neno. That's my friend." And I said, "Well, does he have any CDs to purchase?" And she said, "No, but you can find it on Spotify. He's a good friend of ours." Just by listening to this music, I knew it was an independent artist and not something mainstream. Leon and I then finished our snack and we went on our way. We started walking down this 2-lane road, and it was quite major compared to all of the other roads and paths we had walked along so far on our El Camino journey. And it didn't feel right. We didn't see any signs pointing our direction. So I asked Leon, I said, "I don't see any signs. Are you sure this is the right way?" And he said, "Well, I saw a sign back behind there. It said, 'This way and to the next small town, 500 meters.'" I thought to myself, okay, well, 500 meters it's a bit of a walk. So maybe that's why we're not seeing a sign. But as we walked along, Leon and I started second guessing what the sign said. I didn't see the sign, and because of my question, we began to wonder, did we somehow misunderstand what the sign said? Did it say something else? We weren't sure. And we were about ready to turn around and walk back and take another look when, voila, we saw another sign pointing us in the right direction. So I guess what I'd like to say is that I think it's very important that we trust in ourselves. Sometimes it's easy to lose faith and to think, oh, maybe I'm not on the right path, just as we did today. But if you trust in yourself, you will figure things out.
To continue with Dave's message, we went on to Pamplona, big city relative to the cities we've been to, about 300,000 people. And we didn't book a place to stay. So we're sitting there on a bench, and this man arrives and he said, "Do you have a place to stay?" And we said, "No, we don't." And he said, "Well, follow me. I'll take you to a monastery and they'll put you up for the night." And I said, "How much?" And he said, "Oh, it's only by donation." So lo and behold, we continued on to the monastery, and it was a wonderful evening. Now you must learn to trust in yourself, is the point, right? And that's the theme that we'd like to leave you with. So you take care.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.